We talked about how you had like you when you were reading The Lightning Thief to William, you had like a moment when you were reading the first couple chapters, but I just wanted to ask if there was anything else that came up because I forgot to ask you last week.
Yeah, something comes up in these chapters, and it's William and I actually read this scene again where Percy learns his first sword technique, and it's the thing where they like twirl each other's
Hmm.
swords and then knock it out of their hands. That comes up again in this chapter, and he even mentions this is one of the first moves that Luke taught me.
Hmm.
And it's actually also the first time in the series where we learn about Percy's like water strength.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what's interesting about that. But we kind of stopped right after Percy getting claimed for a second, just because I was going away this weekend.
Yeah. And I will say, just about like the, I guess like the scenes that are being leaked. Like I'm the one who edits our videos, so I get to make this sort of decision. I'm not showing any of those in our videos because
Yeah,
I don't want to see a lot of the stuff that's actually going on. I
yeah,
don't I
just in
don't
case. Yeah,
I don't want to see like what Zoe looks like on Instagram. I don't want to see that. I don't. And I don't want to see entire scenes. Like people are filming dialogue, them
hmm.
saying, I don't want that. I don't want to know
Oh
that.
wow. Yeah,
Like,
I
I don't want to
haven't
know
gotten
that
that
much. I don't
far.
want to hear these scenes for the first time on TikTok or Instagram or something. And I don't know. We'll have more time next week to, because the chapters for next week aren't very long, to
Yeah.
talk about more stuff. But I just don't like how people even found out that they were like filming at this place anyway. So it feels like mixed messages for us to talk about treating child actors well and then be like showing all this stuff. Um,
Yeah. I mean, like filming a whole scene, I luckily haven't stumbled on those. I feel like because you do a lot more of the pulling from the show stuff than I do.
hmm.
And so yeah, I've mostly run into edits where they put music over it and stuff, thankfully. I will say if you're also like Shannon trying not to get a spoiler, a very quick glance, you're not going to get as much detail. Like
Hmm.
and I haven't seen any shots where they show up close of Thalia and Zoe in particular, because those are the costuming ones that are kind of the big deals in the main quest group, right?
Hmm.
And we know with Thalia, Tamara Smart said that she worked with the costumers to try to come up with her own version of like an alternative look. And Zoe, from what I've seen at just like a quick glance and trying to only look at far away shots, it looks kind of book accurate.
Hmm. I'm sure
So
it is.
that's what's interesting because there's some sort of like furry vest thing going on,
Hmm.
and it's pretty cute. I'm not letting myself see any close-up shots of those two in particular, just because like that for me would be too much. That's the
Oh,
part I don't want to see.
and everybody lost it over Aphrodite.
Yes. Okay. So Aphrodite's casting got announced, and it is going to be why did her name just escape my
Kate
brain?
McKinnon,
Kate
at least
McKinnon.
for this version of
Yes.
Aphrodite.
Most popularly these days, probably known for Weird Barbie in the Barbie movie. But she was an actress on Saturday Night Live, and she was in the more recent adaptation of Ghostbusters. I hadn't seen that one. I have
Hmm.
too many like nerds on the spectrum in my family that were like, "Oh, but Ghostbusters supposed to be men. This one sucks." And I didn't watch it just because I was like, I don't know how to feel about this. Like,
That
yeah,
movie was a target of Gamergate people.
yeah.
That was not nice. But I will say I thought that it was an interesting experiment to
Hmm.
see how people just delete information from their brains that they know
Hmm.
when they want to be upset about something. Because all of the like update accounts and people that follow the news really closely and stuff, including like YouTube channels that
Hmm.
focus on the news and stuff for Percy stuff, they all pretended like they didn't read the interview that Rick did with Liam Crowley on Scream Rant like less than a month ago, about a month ago, maybe at the longest, where Rick verbatim literally said, "We're about to start casting the second Aphrodite." He literally said it in the interview, and then he went
Oh
on
shoot,
to
I forgot
explain that
that.
there would be two. This was in Screen Rant. All of you posted about it and all of you talked about it. But then when this news comes out, they're like, "Oh, I don't like who they cast as Aphrodite." I'm like, "Are you pretending like you don't know that there's two of them already?" Like, why did that happen? I don't know why that happened, other than like people like just going into like outrage culture for a second there. That was really annoying. And like, I don't even like Aphrodite. Aphrodite's like my least favorite god of all time because she's everything that makes me feel insecure and not like a human being. Like, she represents love and relationships, and she's basically there in Titan's Curse to pressure Percy into admitting that he has feelings for Annabeth when he's not aware that he does at all, and makes him feel really weird about that. I'm asexual. I have lots of trauma about relationships and like love in general. I don't like her at all, but I know this because I remember things that I read for longer than 2 weeks.
I
And
don't,
so,
apparently. I totally forgot that. I'll admit I'm one of the people who forgot it and was like, I thought the first time he sees her, she's supposed to look like Annabeth. And I think also because this is the first Aphrodite they're announcing the casting of. Like,
yeah, I saw like somebody make a video being like, I don't like how they announced it because couldn't they announce all the people all at the same time? And I was like, they're filming this season for 8 months. Like, they're going to be filming this season until the beginning of March.
yeah.
The ending Aphrodite is probably going to, unless they like add other scenes in. Obviously, we don't know that. We don't even know when she's showing up necessarily in this scene, just because it could they add in scenes with the different gods and stuff anyway. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that the second Aphrodite is probably going to be there at the end when they're all arguing about whether they should kill Percy or not. And so it's probably going
Oh,
to be in one of the
yeah.
last episodes of the season.
Hmm.
And so it's probably not going to be filmed until like February. And so, no, like a TV show isn't going to cast somebody that's not going to film until February and announce it in October. That's
Yeah.
stupid. Nobody would remember that by the time we get to February. Like, they announce things as they're filming the episodes. They're filming the episode when they run into Aphrodite and Ares for the first time. And so they announce this Aphrodite. It doesn't make any sense for them to have both of them already cast together. And I like pointed that out to somebody and they're like, well, they should have said that they were doing more than one. And I was like, you literally verbatim in this video read the press release where they said that they were doing more than one.
Hmm.
So you're mad that they didn't say that when you literally read out the words of them saying that and acknowledged that in your video? Then what are you mad about?
Yeah.
Like, be mad at this show if you think they're making a mistake, but I generally don't know what people are mad about. Besides just like jumping the gun of like, yeah, I don't like Kate McKinnon that much either. I think she's annoying. And I don't like Aphrodite that much anyway. They're gonna have to do like a lot of stuff to make me ever like her, even if they completely change how she's seen, like they have with other female characters so far in this series. They're gonna have to do a lot to get me to like that character. But still, they could, but it's also just like a thing of what? They already said they're gonna do that, and to the point that people started being racist again, of course. And so Becky had to say something to be like, didn't you guys read our press release that there's going to be an Aphrodite that is black because Leah is Annabeth? Thank you
Yeah.
and goodbye.
I
Like
just,
she,
I guess for me, it's more, I thought the first time he sees Aphrodite, she looks like Annabeth, and he's
he,
confused.
he describes her as like having a similar smile as her, but also with it being a TV show, I can see it very easily being her looking like something like Kate McKinnon in the beginning, and then when he sees her at the end, her looking more like Annabeth to show the development of his feelings.
That is true. That would be a good way to like move the plot along.
Because it's a TV show. And it's
Yeah.
just an easy visual way to show how his feelings intensified during that season. And all Annabeth can talk about at the end of the season is we have to go save Luke.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so that's just like a way to like almost, especially if she sees Aphrodite looking like her, that
Hmm.
very obviously is like, what? Like
Yeah.
what? What's going on? And so obviously I'm not a writer in the writer's room or anything, so they might come up with something better than that. But just like that's the first thing that popped in my head of I could see them doing something like that. It's just very annoying when I'm like, I don't even like this character. Why am I defending? Why am I defending this
Yeah.
character? I don't even like
No,
you.
I do like that take though, that that could be, it's just like, I always feel like the tension starts building in Sea of Monsters,
Hmm.
with between them.
Hmm.
But in Titan's Curse, because like because of that ending with her being like, "Oh my gosh, we should go take Luke to Olympus so he could go apologize and like prostrate himself." No, girlie, then he's around all of them.
Yep.
Um, yeah, but like that whole annoyance, that whole back and forth, it doesn't feel romantic tension building. But we do know that there's going to be changes to like the whole Luke, Percy, Annabeth pseudo love triangle thing that was kind of suggested in the books. I don't know.
Yeah, we at least know, well, we know that they talk about things after the Siren Scene in Sea of Monsters.
Yeah.
And so there's enough there to make like Percy feeling more for her when she's gone.
Hmm.
And like and now that she's in danger in Titan's Curse, realize how much she cares about him, and then her stuff getting all messed up.
Yeah.
That could very easily be how they do it, because that does help set up Battle of the Labyrinth when everything is really messed up,
Hmm.
with everything, but especially with them. And
Yeah.
so I honestly don't know. Like, we'll never know. I always say this, but we're not sure how this stuff with Luke is really going to come off. You can't really know for sure until you get to Battle of the Labyrinth, maybe, because the
Hmm.
stuff that makes him really creepy is when he shows up at Annabeth's house.
Yeah.
And so if they do that, include that scene, and depending on how they show it, that's really what will make that look like that or not. Because that's usually the scene that made people look at that if they didn't think anything about that was weird, and be
Hmm.
like, oh, that's really, really weird. What's
Yeah.
going on? But that's like many, many times away. One last thing I'll mention is I was very annoyed last week after we did our episodes. I was trying to look up one like fan thing that people have said about the whole Selena thing
Hmm.
and Luke is they keep saying like, and they say this about Annabeth too, of like, oh, Rick must have forgotten how old he made Luke because the age gap makes this really weird. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's like the literal point
Hmm.
of of these of these storylines, is that it is the point of him being much older than these girls and him using his good looks and his position, blah, 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 to like groom them and try to
Yeah.
destroy them from the inside. I'm pretty sure that's what they're going for. But and I so I got tired. I like kept trying to find, like, did he say this somewhere? Was he joking and people took him seriously? Like, I don't want to just think I'm right just because I think that I am. And so I kept searching for it, and I kept finding all of these Reddit pages all saying the same thing. Rick must have just forgotten how old they were. And I was like, oh my God, why are
Yeah.
you keep saying this? And so I just asked Becky, like, did he ever say this somewhere? And she thought that I was secretly trying to ask a question about Selena being in the TV show because she
Yeah.
doesn't know me. And I tried to tell her, like, if no, I'm not going to secretly ask you a question. If I want to know if Selena's going to be in the TV show, I'm just going to ask you, is Selena going to be in the TV show?
Hmm.
Because I'm not like that. I don't like it when people don't tell me straight up. I spend like 85% of the day trying to figure out if the thing that I said came across right, or if people are secretly asking me something else because I'm autistic and I never know what any of you are talking about. And so I'm the last person on the planet to like secretly try to get her to ask another thing. I know a lot of people do that on there with her, so I don't blame her for
Yeah.
thinking that I was, but I generally was just asking about the books
Hmm.
because it really still bothers me that people say that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that you guys just said that because you don't know what he was actually trying to do, which is really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But either way, she basically said like Luke is somebody that abuses people through age, station, and I forget the last thing, but she was basically saying like all the different ways that he manipulates and abuses people, and she said like that will be part of season 2, and I was
Hmm.
like, oh, that's nice always to read anyway,
Yeah.
of how they see Luke, but yeah, that was interesting. So I'm assuming at this point that people just don't understand when Rick is writing a grooming storyline, which is pretty disappointing because he wrote 2 of them
Yeah.
and they were done really well, but somehow it just went vroom, and people just thought that he somehow did that on accident, forgot. I don't know. That was
Hmm.
weird. Can everyone stop doing that?
Yeah. Well, I feel like this is a good enough segue to the chapters where we're at, because yeah, like we'll get to more show news next week when we have shorter chapters, of course. But
Hmm.
yeah, just know the leaks are out there. You can find them if you want to find them. If you don't want to find them, just be very careful.
Hmm.
But yeah, so we were at chapter 19, fully in the war still, and where we left, so Chiron's buried under some rubble, and Linnaeus died right in front of Grover, and he decided we're going to bring him up to like Olympus.
Hmm.
Percy and Annabeth were already on their way up to Olympus, and this is all right after Selena died, so Annabeth has fully rose-colored glasses about Luke are off. They're not just off, they're like destroyed and stomped on at this point.
Yeah, she's like, let's kill this bitch.
Yes. So they're going up to Olympus. They also run into Thalia at some point too, right? Because she's with
Hmm.
them at the beginning. I forgot where they ran into her last time we read. Um, but chapter 19, we trash the Eternal City. As they're going to Olympus, the bridge to get there immediately starts crumbling, and this is all representative of how people feel about the gods. Like this idea that how the gods are doing is reflected in how Olympus, the actual physical place, is doing.
Hmm.
And so they have to jump for it at one point. Grover's the only one who easily does it. Annabeth is still injured, and so she like barely makes it across, and they have to pull Percy up, who's holding on to her at this point. Um, it says for a second I thought she was going to pull us both over, which like this feels like foreshadowing for stuff that I know that happens later.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so but this would have been falling to death. This would have been not well, I guess Tartarus is worse than death. Um but yeah, this would have been falling off of a very, very tall 600 feet of building. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's no living after that one.
Um let's see. So they immediately start hugging when they get up, and Grover's edging them along like, let's keep moving. Come on. Like we can't stop. Um So the way Grover describes it is the connection between Olympus and America is dissolving. If it fails, the gods won't move on to another country this time, Thalia said. This will be the end of Olympus, the final end. But here's the thing, when you really think about it, is there have been resurgences of interest in Greek and Roman culture since Greek and Roman culture. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
And as much as like I understand what Rick is doing here, I also realistically part of me was thinking, could these like ever truly fully die at this point? Especially you think the invention of the printing press and getting to write things down and mass publish them, and then now we also have videos, movies, like all of this digital stuff. These stories getting archived, which again is why I'm not against adaptations where we're still telling versions of them. Um, like, I don't think that these could ever truly die in that way when we talk about this idea of Western culture dying.
Hmm. I honestly don't know because there are some civilizations through history that hardly anything is known about them
Hmm.
because so much of um, the things that had the information is gone. They're like the people who knew it died or
Hmm.
was killed more of the time, and so it is one of those things that is possible for people to not know so many just like basic things about the civilization that existed.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that you just don't know. It
Yeah.
could like enough time could go by that anyone who had that knowledge just doesn't know it anymore. I'm remembering this time when I was in 10th grade and I was taking another history class about ancient civilizations, and our
Hmm.
teacher had us watching a documentary video about ancient Egypt, and there was like this 80-some-year-old woman that was speaking, that was like fluent in an ancient Egyptian version of Egyptian that only her and like one other person in the world still knew anymore. And after the video was over, everyone in my class kept talking about how sad that lady made them because she was so old, and that documentary was from the 80s, and so we knew she wasn't alive anymore. And it was just
Mhm.
really sad to see like how she was one of the only people alive that still knew this language, and so the language might be gone now.
Yeah.
Even though people love ancient Egypt, that's still a part of it that could just be gone now because it wasn't written down anywhere and it's just gone. And so it's one of those things of you just, if people go out there and destroy all the things where it is saved, then you're never gonna,
That is true. And
like, that's
maybe
literally what Mr. Orangeface is doing right now. If you get
yeah.
rid of where everything is saved and documented, then there's no way to prove that it ever existed.
Yeah,
And
that is one way that it could actually happen. It like with a big enough and catastrophe and a lot of time, yeah.
mhm,
This stuff could get lost again. But I think that because these traditions have been somewhat, like at least some of them have been kept up since Greek and Roman times, there's just so many footprints now that
mhm.
maybe there is a chance that like they couldn't ever be completely wiped away.
Yeah, I don't want to think that any civilization could ever fully
Yeah.
disappear. But it
Especially
is,
like more modern times, right? Because
yeah.
like once we have writing and like digital media, which I don't know how like apocalypse proof that is, but like
Hmm.
yeah, but writing especially, like having things written down, because people can figure out languages from having them written down, like eventually. So I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah. But it was just a philosophical, existential thought I had when they were talking about like this is literally going to be the final end for them.
Hmm.
Let's see. So, in the city of Olympus, mansions are burning, statues had been hacked down, trees and parks were blasted to splinters. It looked like someone had attacked the city with a giant weed whacker, Kronos' scythe.
Hmm.
Um, and so they can even hear Kronos' voice in the distance saying, "Brick by brick, that was my promise, tear it down brick by brick." Um, as they're running, a shrine to Artemis falls, and it's like this big dome-shaped building. Part of me was surprised that Thalia was the only one outraged because Annabeth and her architecture. Part of me was expecting her to be like, "Oh my God, no, not the
Hmm.
building." Yeah, but I think she's just too into it at this point to like be that into it. But then another archway crumbles and a 20-ton scowling Hera statue topples over in the spot where Annabeth and Percy are standing, and Thalia knocks them out of the way at the last second.
Here is such a little bad word.
Yeah, and it's like so part of me was like, "Oh, she wouldn't be so petty that she would do this right now, would
She
she?"
would do
But
this right
then
now.
yeah, Annabeth says it. Annabeth says wait, where is it? It's Hera. She had it in for me all year. Her statue would have killed me if you hadn't pushed us away. And, you know, like Thalia is pinned under the statue. None of them are strong enough to lift it. Like, they, I think Percy says they would need multiple cyclopes in order to move this statue because of how big and heavy it is.
Hmm.
So they have to just leave Thalia behind, which, like, for me, for a second, it's like, wait, she's there and she's pinned to like she's gonna die. Um, but yeah, I got really scared for her in that moment. Let's see. So they get to the throne room, and Kronos doesn't know that notice them at first, and luckily also doesn't notice Bessie. And this also goes back to like just Bessie's existence and being saved by Percy in general,
Hmm.
because like this was the risk that they took when they decided to leave Bessie alive. That he could have taken out Bessie, and that um, then he that would have ensured he won the war because of that old standing prophecy about like whoever takes out the Ophiuchorus
I think
and sacrifices it.
I think Luke slash Kronos is having like the villain monologue moment where they
Yes.
think that they've won
Yes.
already, and so they just don't care or notice the things that would make it true or make it
Yes.
really secure, because he definitely should have noticed Bessie, and Percy would have tried to stop him from killing his friend. But he should have, but he just was so like, oh my god, I'm the coolest guy ever, I won.
Yeah, like literally in the throne room, which one do I destroy first? That's
Hmm.
kind of where he's at mentally right now. And that's when Percy gets his attention. And let's see, shall I destroy you first, Jackson? Kronos asked. Is that the choice you'll make to fight me and die instead of bowing down? Prophecies never end well, you know. And so Percy decides to, like, try to, in my mind, he's trying to coax out Luke here too,
Hmm.
of like, well, Luke would fight with a sword, so, why don't you fight me how he would, unless you can't fight like he can. And so Kronos, he changes his scythe back into Backbiter. Um, Annabeth, at this point, though, starts realizing one line of the prophecy. Percy, the blade, she unsheathed her knife. The hero's soul cursed blade shall reap. But Percy doesn't get it because he's about to fight Kronos. He's like,
Percy's like,
why are
I'm
you
busy
bringing up the
right now.
prophecy?
I am busy right now. I don't have
Yeah.
time to think. You do this.
So yeah, she's like trying to stop the fight because she realized this part of the prophecy, and Percy is just like, I need to figure out what to do here. He can't destroy the throne room. Um, so he's fighting Luke. Meanwhile, Ethan is fighting with Annabeth, like at the same time. Um, Grover's playing his reed pipes and trying to slow both Ethan and Kronos down. Um, so at this point, Kronos backs Percy up to Hephaestus's huge mechanical lazy boy type thing covered in bronze and silver gears. I love that that's his throne.
Hmm.
That he'd be like lounging while everybody's having their little conference. So Kronos slashes at the throne and it goes into defense mode, which shoots tendrils of electricity onto Kronos. And that makes him drop Backbiter for a second. Annabeth tries to take control of the situation again. She kicked Ethan out of the way and charged Kronos. Luke, listen. Um, but Kronos then sends her flying backwards. And let's see, Ethan gets to his feet. He stands between Annabeth and Percy. And Percy couldn't turn his back on Kronos at the same time, so he just kind of has to let Annabeth go, and Grover takes over a little bit. He starts like playing his reed pipes, and grass is kind of growing up, and it sounds like it's supposed to be some sort of cocoon over her that
Hmm.
grows. Also, like the roots still grabbing and slowing everybody down.
Hmm.
Um, so Kronos says at this point, Nakamura, time to prove yourself. You know Jackson's secret weakness. Kill him and you will have rewards beyond measure. And Percy realizes how screwed he is, like, depending on what Ethan does here, too. Because even if he couldn't kill me, all he had to do was tell Kronos, is what he's thinking here. Um, let's see. Look around you, Ethan. I said, the end of the world. Is this really what you want? Do you really want everything destroyed? The good with the bad, everything? And Ethan says there is no throne to Nemesis, no throne to my mother. And Kronos tries to like do the Emperor Palpatine, like that's right, let the anger fill you. Trying to get him, strike them down, they deserve to suffer. And Percy says, "Your mom. You said your mom is the goddess of balance. The minor gods deserve better, Ethan, but total destruction isn't balance. Kronos doesn't build; he only destroys." We This is like the same exact thing that happens with Anakin Skywalker too, of like
Hmm.
how is destroying all the Jedi's bringing balance to the Force?
That
How is
doesn't make any
destroying all the
sense.
demigods destroying Olympus? How
Or
is
like,
that? Yeah.
how are you helping the demigods by killing all of them who don't agree with you in this exact moment in time,
Yes.
leaving hardly any of them still left alive? That doesn't seem like you're helping anybody
Hmm.
exactly. The part where he's saying like, do you want to destroy everything? Like the good along with the bad. That just reminds me of like every edgy person on
Hmm.
the internet that's like, I want the revolution to happen so that everything can like happen, and they have like this weird love for this idea of like fire and death and destruction and what they think a revolution is like based on TV and like movies and stuff. Because I'm just like, do you guys, they don't realize, but they should at this point, that the people that get taken out first in that situation are the people that you usually like. That's how it works. The poor people, like
Yeah.
if like the disenfranchised people, like, are you kidding? If like something like that happened, I would be done for. Like I would have nobody to help me. I don't have any money. I don't have any way to get anywhere or do anything or try to survive something like that. And I'm autistic. Do you really think that I could handle something like that? Like, I would have to, but it would not go well at all, in any way. And so that's the people that get hurt.
Yeah.
Those are the people that, should we die for you?
Hmm.
So that you can like have this fantasy of believing that revolution like that, like total annihilation, is the only way to go. Like we haven't got to the scene yet with Luke, but people talk about Luke as if he's doing what needed to be done, or like this is like the only way that this could happen. I'm like, I am never going to be that pessimistic ever. That the only way to fix things is by just destroying everything and everyone connected to it and starting over from nothing. That is a very black and white, simplistic way of looking at the world's problems. I should be that pessimistic based on my life, but I'm not. And so, why are you? Like,
Yeah.
why are people like that? When, like, the people, like, most of the friends that I have online are severe trauma survivors, none of us are like that.
Yeah, I think it's like failing to see the bigger picture mostly. It's just people saying things because they want things to change and they don't know what actual good change would look like. Ethan at this point, he has to make a choice. He has to decide, is he going to actually give Percy's weak spot away, or is he like actually in favor of the revolution because Percy has like presented him like, look around you, dude, like look what's happening. Do you think that this is it? Like, do you think he's actually going to rebuild? Come on.
Mm-hmm.
um and so
Mr.
Ethan's,
Balance. Does this
yeah.
seem balanced in any way?
And Grover, meanwhile, is still playing those reed pipes. I would love to see how they represent this on the show eventually, of like Ethan starts swaying to the music that Grover is playing. It's as if the song were filling him with nostalgia, a wish to see a beautiful day, to be anywhere but here. His good eye blinked. Then he charged, but not at me. And so Ethan charges Kronos, but unfortunately, because of the Achilles curse, he's impenetrable. So like it bounces off of him. A shard of his own blade hits Ethan, and um, it's Kronos then also is like traitor, stomps his feet, and the floor around Ethan just falls. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so all Kronos says at this, and this I need to remind people, this is somebody who literally helped Kronos get his body. Kronos says so much for him, and now for the rest of you when that happens.
Yeah. He doesn't care about anyone
Exactly.
or anything. Um, but yeah, Ethan, that's like, Ethan's story is such an interesting story because he is just taken in by Kronos because he just wants to believe that something could get better faster. That's honestly why, even though I just ranted about all that, that's why people believe that stuff, because they want to believe that things can just like improve overnight, and they don't like it when people show up and say that's just not like how anything works. It takes change over time to make anything like long term, like permanent change, as opposed to like something right now that won't last.
Hmm.
But Ethan did the right thing in the end because he just realized like this is stupid.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure, honestly, with a lot of other people, if they would have, when they realized that, if they would have done the same thing, or if they would have just been like, well, I've gone this far, I might as well just like finish this once and for all sort of thing.
Yeah.
But he was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. He's terrified of Kronos. Like in the
Hmm.
couple chapters leading up to this in this book, he's really scared of him. He lies to him at first about knowing where Percy's thing is, because Percy reminds him that, oh right, he saved my life and now I'm trying to kill him. That seems stupid. What am I doing? But like, that takes a lot of guts to
Hmm.
run at Kronos knowing that he's gonna kill you.
Yeah.
And doing it anyway because at least that's a decision he could live with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so at this point though, that gave Grover enough time to get to Annabeth and actually give her some ambrosia. Glowed. A sheet of white smoke poured from the fire, forming images like an iris message. I saw Nico and my parents down on Fifth Avenue fighting a hopeless battle, ringed in enemies. In the background, Hades fought from his black chariot, summoning wave after wave of zombies out of the ground, but forces of the Titans' army seemed just as endless. Meanwhile, Manhattan was being destroyed. Mortals, now fully awake, were running in terror. Cars swerved and crashed. And then he sees the scene with Typhon. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because, like, he's going over the Hudson River. Um, he kind of like his head is so terrible and it keeps switching from monster to monster that Percy doesn't look at it. His body is green and bumpy and um it really looks like the other gods aren't doing any damage in the scene that he first sees. And Percy is thinking because he had just had that conversation with Poseidon where he's like, "Hey, you got to step in. You got to help out your family, please." He's thinking, "Please let this be the moment that Poseidon jumps in. Like, please, please let it."
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, he hears a conch blow while this image is coming up. And his dad doesn't look old and decrepit anymore. He looks normal again and he strikes at Typhon with a army of Cyclopes, and he even gets to see Tyson, who is leading one of the groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, let's
30
see.
foot tall Tyson.
Yes, he's somehow 30 feet tall too when he's like fighting this battle. And with Poseidon's help, they actually take him down, wrap him in a cocoon of seems like water chains.
Mm-hmm.
And Poseidon opens up a special tunnel for him as he splashes over the George Washington Bridge, that is going to take him directly down to Tartarus. So just water slide straight down. Um, which, by the way, Tartarus, so the mythology is if you were to drop a rock from Olympus to Earth, it would be the same distance down to Tartarus. So it's a really big water slide because he's going from Olympus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, he's not going from Olympus. He's going from the
Earth.
Hudson River. Bruce is getting angry now, realizing that the battle has turned. His biggest, strongest, tankiest dude just got taken out, which is
Mm-hmm.
a pretty hopeless situation when you're playing in any sort of like army or party game. Your tank is the person you need to actually defeat your enemies. Um, so, Percy says they're on their way, you've lost. And this is where the move from the beginning of the series comes in, where the first sword lesson that Luke ever gave Percy was how to disarm your enemy with your sword.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kronos Luke does the same thing to Percy here. Um, and Percy's remembering that's literally the first thing he taught me. Annabeth, though, comes in at this point, and she's just going full on between Percy and Kronos at this point. No fucks given. She's just like,
Nope.
I'm not letting anything happen. Um, and one of the things too that caught me here was because we've heard the lore a couple of times now on this channel of her getting given the knife and Luke specifically telling her that only the best skilled people can really work with a knife like that. So, Kronos rolled to her face and slashed with Backbiter, but somehow Annabeth caught the strike on her dagger hilt. It was a move only the quickest and most skilled knife fighter could have managed, is what
Mm-hmm.
Percy's thinking here. And she's trying to talk to Luke through Kronos. Kronos is still in control at this point, though. And so she's saying things like, Luke, you have to listen to me. I understand what's going on now. Like, please listen to me. And Kronos is responding back to her. Um, she says, "Your mother, she saw your fate. Service to Kronos," the Titan roared. "This is my fate." And she says, "No, that's not the end, Luke. The prophecy. She saw how what you would do. It applies to you. Um, I will crush you, child. You won't, you promised. You're holding Kronos back even now." Lies. Kronos pushed, and this time Annabeth lost her balance. Um, with his free hand, Kronos struck her face, and she slid backwards. Um, and so Annabeth, she like falls back. She's bleeding from her face at this point, and she says, "Family, Luke, you promised." And this is where Kronos starts to switch consciousness back to Luke a little bit.
Hmm.
Because he looks at the knife that Annabeth has, and he starts saying, "Promise." He couldn't control his own body. "You're bleeding." And Annabeth starts saying, "My knife, Percy, please," because at this point, this fall broke her arm, and so she can't even lift the knife to do what she wants to do. Him like Kronos start to potentially take over again. His whole body starts glowing gold, but then Luke's voice comes in. He's changing. Help! He's almost ready. He won't need my body anymore. And then Kronos' voice screams no. Um, Annabeth starts telling him again, like the prophecy, "My knife, like hero, cursed blade shall reap." So they, Percy and Luke at this point catch on to what Annabeth is saying, and Percy grabs the knife. He wants to do it himself at first, but Luke says, "Percy, please, you can't." You can't do it yourself. He'll break my control. He'll defend himself. Only my hand. I know where I can keep him controlled. And so Percy starts playing everything in his mind again. Rachel saying, "You're not the hero, like the hero of the prophecy. It'll affect what you do." And so Percy hands over the knife. Annabeth, of course, knows what's going on. Grover's like, "What?"
What?
Yeah,
What?
yeah. So, Luke, he unlatches the straps of his armor, exposing a small bit of his skin just under his left arm, his armpit, like you said, a place that would be very hard to hit, and then he stabs himself. And,
And okay, wait,
yeah.
we have to talk about this stuff before we like keep going, basically. Because I've heard so
Hmm.
many multiple wild like people trying to come up with like a I like the analysis thing that they're trying to do of
Hmm.
like why Percy's like spot is in his back and
Hmm.
why Luke's spot is where it is. But
Hmm.
like this scene makes it very clear to me anyway of like why they are where they are, and this is just my own interpretation of it, and so you can tell me that I'm stupid and wrong, but this is like how I think it is the reason why the spots are where they are is because of this scene.
Hmm.
Because them doing the Achilles curse has to do with how this prophecy will end. Percy's
Hmm.
spot is in his back because he is the vulnerable, like, kind hearted one. And
Hmm.
so he is, like, reaching out to people and trying to convince them not to do these horrible, bad things to people because he cares about people. And so
Yeah.
his would have to be on his back like that because Ethan would have to, you know, literally and figuratively stab him in the back because he's already, tried to bring him into camp and tried to show him friendship and stuff in
Hmm.
order for that to happen. And Luke's on the opposite side is where it is because he has to give up trying to fight.
Hmm.
Because Luke's whole thing is he's been on an endless rage quest forever, at least since he was 14 years old, and he was fantasizing about fighting the gods like we read in Demigod Diaries. And
Yeah.
so Luke has to, it's not about where it is in the body, it's about the fact that it's covered up by his armor. And so the
Yeah.
only way for somebody to get it is by him taking his armor off and like letting himself stop and finally stopping. Like they are opposites. Like Percy
Hmm.
is all about helping other people, which is why his would be somewhere where they would have to surprise him from behind or to hurt him. Luke's is in the front of him because everything he's doing is all about him and his legacy and him being the best. And so he
Hmm.
has to stop all of that and stop all of that craziness, admit that he was wrong, swallow his pride, and like take himself out.
Yeah.
Like that is what this whole thing is about. That's why the spots are the place that they are, not because they are parallels of each other, they are opposites. They
Hmm.
are opposites of each other. They do everything opposite.
Yeah.
Everything, every single major thing that they decide, they make polar opposite decisions.
Hmm.
That is the point of this scene, is to show how different they are. That Percy is saying to Ethan, like, think about all the things that this is doing. Do you really think this is the way to help demigods? While Luke is having to stop himself because he's led this to happen in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, that's why they are where they are. I'm pretty sure that's why they are where they are. I don't think that I'm wrong about that, because they are very much opposites. And, like, I get sort of why people want them to be parallels, but because feel like they take like the fact of who their moms are and then
Hmm.
like work backwards. But it is just one of those things, like if you just read the scene for how it is, the things that you're supposed to get from it just like are right there, and you don't have to work so hard, because Percy and Luke are not the same.
Yeah.
They are not the same person at all. This show, like, could you be more obvious in this scene just alone? Like, Luke is having to fight for power of his own body because he
Hmm.
was willing to give everything up so he could have unlimited power.
Yeah.
And Percy is like, never wants power. And is like, try to give everybody else more power. Like, that's not this, that's very opposite. Everything they do is the opposite of what the other one would do. That's the point, is that there are things you could say that they are similar about, but they're so small that
Hmm.
that doesn't really, that even like where Percy eventually starts talking about his like who he saw like in the as his like tether to the world, even that is for polar opposite reasons, even if it's the same
Yes.
person. And so that's what this whole thing is supposed to make you think of. And it is like Percy has to be the prophecy child, because nobody else would ever give Luke his own knife, for
Hmm.
like actually trust him enough that he would actually do the right thing. Because that's
Yeah.
why Grover's like, what are you doing? Luke is just gonna like literally backstab you.
Yeah.
And like he has to literally everyone else over and over and over again. Thalia would never. She would
Yeah.
never give Luke a weapon like that and actually trust that he was actually gonna do what he said. Nico wouldn't either. Like
Hmm.
neither, like no any other person being the prophecy child, this would never work because they wouldn't be willing to do that.
Yeah.
Like Percy is the one that's willing to do that because he still sees the like basic humanity even in the villains that he is going after. He still sees them as like people, as not just like these crazy maniacal villains. He sees basic levels of humanity in all of them. That's just, he's like that throughout the entire run of books. He always can see that. He even comments on things, he can understand why Gaia is upset in Heroes of Olympus and things like that. Like no matter how bad the villain is, he can see something in them that he feels like connected to them. Like we said before, like he doesn't like hurting Cyclops because they remind him of Tyson. He doesn't like
Hmm.
hurting anything that reminds him of anyone that he actually cares about. And so he has to be somebody that like empathetic and caring and understanding, who isn't going to just get like enraged and go off and want to stab Luke. And
Yes.
even if it's very understandable why you would want to, he like Luke is right that it would Kronos would have just taken over and killed them, killed all of them,
Hmm.
killed Percy, killed Annabeth, killed everybody, and that would have been the end of it. Because that's what he wants. He wants you to like lose it and just
Yeah.
feel like rage and give in to that rage and not think for a second. But that's not who Percy is. But it has to be him in order for it to work.
Hmm.
Nobody else would necessarily do that. At least from especially the big three kids,
Yeah.
none of them would be able to do something like that and to like put
Yeah.
like that pride aside and not care, because he doesn't care. Like he actually doesn't care. He really doesn't care. about like power and people knowing his name and prestige and like being known. He doesn't care about any of that. He just
Exactly.
wants everyone to be okay. And so it's like, yeah, okay. If it means that I don't have to kill Luke, he doesn't want to kill Luke either. And
Yep.
I'm like, if I don't have to stab him, like he thought he had to, and all these people made him think that he was going to, and so he was trying to ready himself for doing it. But it's like, okay, if I don't have to do this, and you can just do this yourself, then we're good now. And like the last thing to say is that I posted about this the other like yesterday after I read these chapters and I wanted to like throw my book across the room and just like scream because of how much I love it, because I'm like, this is exactly the kind of thing that I always want in books like this, and they usually never do it.
Hmm.
Because legitimately this is a book series that tells you that if you're a villain that's gone too far, just kill yourself. Just kill yourself. That's what they did with Gabe too. Basically, Gabe basically killed himself by them doing the Medusa thing at him. But if Gabe
Hmm.
hadn't like been like, "Oh, what's that?" or whatever, however Sally did it, it wouldn't have happened to him either. And it's just, yeah, just kill yourself. Generally,
Yeah.
if my dad would have done that when I was a little kid, my life would have been so much better. Like seriously,
Yeah.
if you're that far gone of a person, just do it. Just take yourself out so you stop hurting everybody else. Because that's generally what they said. Like, well, Luke has gone too far, way too far. We can't
Hmm.
like stop him anymore. Like we can't like save him in that way. It's gone, it's like past the point of no return by far. And so
Hmm.
you die. Just die. Just take yourself out so we don't have to do this
Yeah.
and be done with this once and for all.
Yeah. So, this obviously has like a much too long, in my opinion, death scene that happens afterwards where he does have full-on conversations. So Annabeth, she starts saying, "You were a hero at the end, Luke. You'll go to Elysium." Elysium? I always forget how to say it.
Elysium?
Elysium or yeah, I've heard it said both ways. Um, and he says, "Think rebirth. Try 3 times. Isles of the Blessed." And Annabeth says, "You always push yourself too hard. Um, did you love me?" This is the part you always bring up. And Annabeth, she stops for a second. There was a time I thought she looked at me like she was drinking in the fact that I was still here, and I realized I was doing the same. The world was collapsing, and the only thing that really mattered to me was that she was alive. "You were like a brother to me, Luke," she said softly, "but I didn't love you." And so I wonder if this is more something that was like kind of more for Annabeth, her just being a naive little girl, and this guy
Mm-hmm.
cares about me, and oh, he's starting to look good because I have hormones now, and like, you know what I mean? Because she did see him from little girl to like now she's a teenager. And so I have to wonder like how much of that was fueled by like puberty and just her being like, I'm aware that boys exist now, and oh wait, there's this boy that's always been in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it was 100% Luke manipulation, and I would say it's probably a combo.
Yeah,
Um,
it
and I would
probably
say
is.
he didn't really even, I don't think manipulating Annabeth was necessarily even a primary goal for him until he got onto Kronos' side, though. That's the thing.
Well, it's confusing because he was on Kronos' side for so long.
Yeah.
Um, like we didn't know, even in the Lightning Thief, we didn't know him ever when he wasn't. And he talks about at some point in the Lightning Thief at the end, he mentions kind of when that stuff started and things like that. And so it was going on for at least a little while before anyone was aware. But I don't know. I think that Luke is somebody that just like is willing to use whatever he has at his disposal to get what he needs.
Hmm.
And I think that he had this like weirdly romanticized idea of Annabeth because of how he was able to like quote unquote save her when
Hmm.
she was a little girl, and liked how he did that. One thing that they do mention in this scene at some point is that the reason why the Annabeth's blade was cursed was because he promised to take care of her and he didn't.
He literally
And
slapped her in the face and
yeah,
like threw her multiple
and
times.
hurt her over and over and over again, and then finally like actually physically hurt her. But that's why her blade was the cursed blade in the first place, was because of how much she completely let everybody down.
Hmm.
And so I think for him, he maybe wasn't from the beginning being like, oh, I'm going to manipulate Annabeth. But I also think that he's somebody who believed that Annabeth would join him.
Hmm.
And then when she didn't, then he started trying to like bargain with himself and Kronos to figure out a way to not kill her, because he still wanted to. I think he honestly always wanted to believe that she would like eventually join his side or something.
Hmm.
Because all the stuff in Battle Labyrinth, of even in this book where Kronos is mentioning like, oh, he wanted to spare you, but I don't care about that anymore, kind of stuff.
Hmm.
It's like he wanted her to be like the one special person, which is really creepy in and of itself, that he was
Yeah.
doing that with her. Like, that's honestly, that is like kind of a whole weird grooming thing with like older men, is that whole thing of like, oh, he doesn't like anybody, but he likes me, kind of
Hmm.
thing, is like a whole thing that happens with people. It makes you think that you are special somehow or something,
Yeah.
that they are only nice to you, when that's actually the biggest red flag ever, that they're a bitch to literally everyone else alive except for you.
Hmm.
But the whole like, did you love me thing, it's just like wild to me in like Luke's head, of like, what would he think if she said yes? Like,
Yeah.
what would that mean? Like, what would he get out of it? And like the thing that I always thought, even when I read this book for the first time, was that he just wanted to hurt Percy.
Hmm.
By Because it's very obvious at this point that like he has already seen things between Annabeth and Percy for a while now, like happening in front of him for at least a couple books at this point. But
Yeah.
especially in this moment, like he has to see how they mean a lot to each other and things like that. He saw, granted he was in Kronos' body, but still he saw what, like how he told everyone to back off when somebody hurt Annabeth, and that she was somehow able to know that he was about to die and stopped it without even fully realizing why or like how or anything. And so it's wild to think that as he's like dying, that one of the last things he says on planet Earth is like, "Oh, little girl, did you actually love me?" And it's like, no. And like I do think that she had feelings for him, because she literally admitted that she did,
Yeah.
in the last book and this one. But also, if I was her, I wouldn't want to say that, especially after everything that happened with Selena. I wouldn't want to be like, yeah, I fell for you too. You just didn't get a chance to kill me like you killed her. But it's just that it's definitely something that he wanted her to say. And so I'm glad that she didn't.
Let's see. Here is when he grabs Percy, and this is the annoying part because it's like it is one of those things that Percy wouldn't have done this. Like he just watched Ethan plummet to his death.
Hmm.
He wouldn't have just like he wouldn't have forgotten that the other demigods exist. But Luke says, Ethan, me, all the unclaimed, don't let it happen again. His eyes were angry but pleading too. I won't, I said, I promise. And that's when he literally just like goes slack. And so,
Bye.
um, Percy calls for a shroud for his son of Hermes, and the Olympians all somehow end up there in that moment too. They just got back from the fight. They're all still in battle regalia, like just like, hey,
Hey
oh,
guys.
it's already done. Okay, cool. Um, yeah.
I want
So,
to talk too about what, for this
yeah.
one part of how Luke dies, how
Hmm.
just like media wise, it's so refreshing.
Hmm.
And when I read this, it still feels very refreshing. I remember when I read this book in 2010, 11, one of those years, 2011, I think. It was so refreshing to read a book that ended like this with the villain, instead of
Hmm.
it ending how it usually does. Like, I Googled this last night just to make sure that I was remembering this right about Harry Potter, with how Snape dies.
Hmm.
That Snape is actually like killed. And then
Yeah.
afterwards, you're supposed to feel sad about it for stupid reasons. But either way,
Yeah.
like he actually is killed. Or like, Darth Vader and by turning fully into Darth Vader, when Anakin turns fully into him, he basically dies. He's still alive, but there's a whole like
Hmm.
symbolic thing going on by him like burning himself to death extensively. And then he does die in Return of the Jedi, but has this like
Hmm.
moment of coming back, similar ish to this whole thing with Luke, but I think Anakin did a lot more,
Yeah.
honestly, in the end of Return of the Jedi than Luke ever actually did. But there's I'm sure there's other examples that other people can think of, but usually, even like with Avatar: The Last Airbender, with what's his name, Lord
Or
Sozin,
no,
is
Sosa's
that
the
the bad guy?
grandpa. Oh my
Ozai,
gosh.
that's his name.
Yes, there we go.
Ozai. That Ozai gets his powers taken from him by Aang, as like, and Aang tells him like, you can, if you just stop, I won't do this. And of course he's like, I'm not gonna stop. And so then he's like, okay, I'll just take your powers away then. Um, but and I love that ending with Avatar: The
Hmm.
Last Airbender, and I even like the Star Wars one, but I don't like the Harry Potter one. It's weird that they she tries to make you like somebody who's a horrible
Yeah, what's even
human
weirder is how
being.
much wedding merchandise you can find that just says always with like a Deathly Hollows. Oh my gosh, cringe.
God.
Um,
But
but
yeah,
yeah,
it's. I'm trying to think of other examples, but those are good ones. That there's so many times when villains get killed in big, like adaptations or big things like this that have like a bunch of build up, and it always bothers me in those ones where it shouldn't have to like rest on like like quote unquote good guys or the heroes. They shouldn't have to do this.
hmm,
Like they shouldn't have to kill anybody. They shouldn't have to do these things.
yeah,
They shouldn't have to be the one having to do this stuff. And instead of it being a thing of like I realized that I was wrong this whole time, it was a little bit of that, but not really. It was more like you just can leave now. Bye. And that's basically what it is. It's not like a thing of we're going to like rehabilitate your image, or you're secretly actually been helping us this whole time and we just had no idea, which is
hmm,
like what the whole Snape thing was in Harry Potter. There's none of that. Like Luke was actually trying to kill all of them this entire time. Kronos and
yeah,
him did not think that they were going to lose until this exact moment when they suddenly were losing. And he realized, I think, during this book that like his body was going to disintegrate and die. And so he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to get to like enjoy any of this. He's just been lying to me all this time." And it's like, "No
hmm,
shit. Of course he's been lying to you, weird person."
yeah,
But it just feels like it's just so satisfying to see an ending like this that is not about like secretly making the villain not as bad or whatever. It's like, no, he was bad. He just realized at the very end that he can stop this, and he actually got his stuff together for 10 seconds and did it.
hmm,
If he would have done this at any other point in the last 5 years before now, none of this would have ever had to happen.
yeah,
But I just appreciate that, which is like, this is always one of the big arguing points I make with people who talk about like why I say this series is so much better than Harry Potter or and a lot of the other like kind of YA middle school ish series is because it does end this way. It
hmm,
doesn't end with like a magical fix it thing. Everyone who died is still dead.
yep,
Like everyone who went through that is still gone. Like if you believe that Luke would walk through Elysium and Charlie and Selena wouldn't rip his head off of his body and throw his body into a forest somewhere and leave him there to rot, you're wrong. Much less all the other kids that he killed in the course of this book, much less all the other years before now. You better
yeah,
believe that they would be waiting for him if he would never get in there anyway. But just to say that if he did, like he wouldn't be in there for very long
hmm,
because those people are still dead. He still killed those people.
yeah,
And I just really appreciate that because so many times they try to like lessen the villain like responsibility for what they do. And
hmm,
I just, it doesn't have to be like that. You can just realize at the last second, after being a monster for your entire life, you can just realize at the last second, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like
yeah,
I like to believe my dad did that too. He just like couldn't speak anymore, which like thank God. But But
Yeah.
I don't think that he would have ever even admitted that to me unless he went through like the debilitating process of having dementia and not being able to walk and losing a bunch of weight and not being able to even speak anymore. And all of that stuff that he did during those years, I don't think he would have ever even realized that when he was alive.
Mhm.
If he didn't go through all of that and realize, like, wow, this really sucks. And it's not
Yeah.
even close to the shit that he put me through, much less what he put anyone else in his life through. But it did really suck for him. And he used to look at me when he was the last couple months of his life and say sorry. And I didn't know what he was saying sorry for, because I my brain did not work. But he would say like sorry or I love you, and he was not the type to say that sort of thing. Even though I knew he did, it was he would not say it out loud very much ever. And so that was him trying to do that when he couldn't really talk. I realized that. I like realized that a little bit at the time, but I realized that especially now.
Mhm.
That doesn't make up for anything that he did before that moment.
Nope.
Not at all. And it's the same thing with Luke. It doesn't make up for any of the destruction. Like all of this that happened is his fault.
Mhm.
Um, like even the scene we're about to go into with when Percy gets to do his big moment, he even gets to say like this never would have gotten this far if you guys didn't suck. But it still is like a thing if Luke still would have tried to do it,
Yeah.
like regardless of that, he would have tried. It would have been easier to stop him, but he still would have tried. He would have
Yeah.
had to use somebody else but Ethan, because Ethan wouldn't have been the one to help him. But it would have just he would have tried to get somebody else, but he still would have done it no matter what.
I mean, the feeling, and I mean, Percy also, he can see both sides of it by the end. We'll get there,
Hmm.
but like, I think for Luke in particular, the thing that he needed was he needed someone like, if you're going to tell me you've seen my fate and that it looks so scary, like, why would you not just warn me? Why would you not just warn me? And like, I don't know. I don't know if the thing as a parent is to not tell them or is to be completely honest. Um, it's hard to say where I would be with that, you know?
I don't think it's ever a good idea to be completely honest
Mm-mm.
because you just don't know, especially with a child, you just don't know how that's going to feel. Like it's a huge responsibility that you're putting on someone. Like adults have problems with
Mm-hmm.
that sort of responsibility, much less a child. And it just like gets in your head, like thinking
Mm-hmm.
about all these different decisions you have to make of like how am I going to make the right one, or like how could I end up in this place, or what if I do something different, is that going to change everything? Like we got little hints of that
Mm-hmm.
in this book with Percy, like thinking every single decision he ever made. Like, is this the choice I'm making? Am I doing the right thing? Is everyone going to die now because I made this choice instead of that choice? And
Mm-hmm.
it just would send him on these like anxiety panic spirals for moments when until somebody would like pull him out of it because something was usually exploding.
Mm-hmm.
But like that him going through that in this one book showed like how much pressure that is. It's never a good idea for a person to know that much about yourself.
Yeah.
It's just too hard. Like it's too hard to know all of that stuff. Like I don't know. Like I even like you know how people play those games of like oh if you went back in time, like what would you tell like your like younger self? Like I don't know how to ever do those because I don't even know what I would tell my younger self. Besides, like I think she would be like mad slash surprised that we were still alive, and so I'll probably have to spend a bunch of time just convincing her that I actually am her. Because she would never believe that. Absolutely
Yeah.
never ever believe that. Not even one time. It would take a while to convince her even of that. But I also don't think like if I went back in time, try to give her, I would try to give her tips that I know now of like how to like get help and things like that without it becoming a really bad thing. Like too dangerous of a thing of too many people finding out all at once kind of thing. I would try to help her with that. Like, hey, look up this like this DV shelter. They have a phone number that's anonymous, and you can call them or tell this teacher we have because they're a nice person. They probably won't tell anybody. about what you say if you ask them not to, kind of thing. Or like your mom doesn't actually understand what's going on, go back and tell her again. And things like that, because those things would actually be helpful in the moment, but it wouldn't be telling her everything. If I told her absolutely everything, it would be that would be way too much. It would be
Yeah.
overwhelming for her to know all those things of how long it lasts and how far it goes on and all that kind of stuff. I would never want even younger me to be like handling all of that stuff. Just like how I don't think like younger, like I don't think Percy would want to go back and tell like 6 year old self like all this anything about anything that happens to him either. I just don't think that that's ever a good idea, because you're putting, to me that always feels like selfish of the adult. It feels like they're stressed by this unknown thing about somebody they care about, and so they're like dumping it on them
Hmm.
instead of dealing with it. Like, I'll yell about Hermes again in a second, but
Yeah.
but it's like that general thing of like it's your responsibility as the adult to handle that, and if you can't do it, figure it out,
Hmm.
because you're the adult. It's your job. If you have children in your life that you care about, it's your job to figure out how to handle that without it putting any of that on them. And
Yeah.
so I don't think it's ever right to like lay all that on their feet just so you can like be free from carrying it around. It's like the least that you can do for that person is carry that around with you for a little while, and then see what happens later.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Um, so next we get chapter 20, we win fabulous prizes. So the Fates come in to carry away Luke, and this is also a callback to the first book. So first thing is, Percy like looks in the eye of one of the Fates, and he sees basically himself grow old, and then he sees like his grave literally get lowered into the ground. So life flashes before his eyes. But what happens is he also starts thinking back to that scene in the first book where he sees them like knitting and then pulling out some blue yarn and cutting it. And that's when he realizes the yarn was never mine. It was Luke's. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and with that, with Luke being the person it's about, it kind of almost symbolizes that Percy starting on, like his own little demigod journey was the start of the end of Luke. So they take Luke's bodies away, or they're about to take Luke's body away, and then Hermes comes and he says wait, and he gives it a kiss on the forehead, his own little like blessing. And Percy says here, I thought about May Castellan alone in her kitchen baking cookies and making sandwiches for a son who would never come home. Um, Now, I looked this up more for Rachel purposes, but the exact words of what Hades put the curse like to be was like, and his condition on it was, as long as my children remain outcasts, as long as I labor under the curse of your great prophecy. So the great prophecy has been fulfilled, and we know Nico isn't gonna come in and outcast, because him and the army of undead and Hades and all of that were like literally fighting the battle in Manhattan. So
Mm-hmm.
that's that's kind of like when we know May probably snapped out of it.
Yeah. What I thought of
Yeah.
it during this part when they talk about how Rachel is gone, they don't know where she
Yes.
is, and that Hades comes in with Nico and everybody is like congratulating him for helping them and stuff. I was like, yeah, this would be the moment that she would do that and wake up and be like,
Yep.
what's going on? Like, where am I? What happened? Like, who am I? Like, where's my son who's now 23 years old and dead?
Oh my gosh.
Like all that kind of stuff. I just think about that, of what she had to go through or like realize what she accidentally made happen when she had no idea what was really going on. Like if anyone has like a big grudge with the gods, it would definitely be her.
Yeah.
Like I thought I was trying to help you guys, to help protect my son, and because you guys don't know how to communicate, somehow my son and me are the ones that ended up in the middle of all of this mess. Like,
Yeah.
just because Hades doesn't know how to tell anybody anything and is too busy being an emo little weirdo in the underworld.
So yeah, as I said, Hermes, he unwraps Luke for a second, kisses his forehead, gives a final blessing, and says farewell. As Luke's getting carried away, Percy starts thinking about the great prophecy. So this is where we get everything spilled out. A hero's soul the cursed blade shall reap. The hero was Luke. The cursed blade was the knife he'd given to Annabeth long ago, cursed because Luke had broken his promise and betrayed his friends. A single choice shall end his days. My choice to give him the knife and to believe, as Annabeth had, that he was still capable of setting things right. Olympus to preserve or raise. By sacrificing himself, he had saved Olympus. Rachel was right. In the end, I wasn't really the hero. Luke was. And this is also the part I also understood something else when Luke had descended into the river Styx. He would have had to focus on something important that would hold him to his mortal life. Otherwise, he would have dissolved. I had seen Annabeth, and I had a feeling he had too. He had pictured that scene Hestia showed me of himself in the good days with Thalia and Annabeth when he promised that they would be a family. Hurting Annabeth in the battle had shocked him into remembering that promise. It had allowed his mortal conscience to take over again and defeat Kronos. His weak spot, his Achilles heel, had saved us all. Um, so, yeah, as you were saying earlier, it being kind of a different side of the same thing with them both like thinking of Annabeth in that moment because him going back to those memories of them before they went to Camp Half-Blood when he actually felt like he had a family. His thing with Annabeth was found family. And for Percy, it kind of is that this is my person, even if he doesn't understand it yet. And it's like he slowly is coming into the realization now that like Luke is completely out of the way. We kind of see it just happen more and more as Percy has less stress and he's starting to think about like what's really important to him.
Yeah, because today, the day of today in the books is his birthday.
Yes.
And so he didn't know if he was going to live past the age of 16 or
Yeah.
just turning 16. He didn't know until right now that he was actually going to survive this. He pretty much assumed that he wasn't.
Yeah.
And so once you know that you're going to live, you're like, what do I, what do I do now? Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? I'm still alive? What do you mean I'm still alive? Like, I thought that I would be dead by now and I wouldn't have to make any of these choices because I'd be dead. And so now that I'm not, it's like, oh, what do you mean I have to like figure out the rest of my life now? And
Yeah.
thankfully Percy has like some support with his own people in his life that are there to help support him and help him feel good in moments like this, like Annabeth and Grover and his mom and Paul and things and Nico and Tyson and basically everyone but his actual parents that are in this like last scene. But it took a while to like even realize that like he could even do that. Like there's a line during
Yeah.
this part where he says like, I didn't realize how terrified I had been the last couple days. And it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, because that's literally what it was. It's like when your back is up against the wall and you have to do things because there's no other choice. That was
Yeah.
all he was doing for at least the last couple days, but in some way for like years of his life. He was just like, well, I have to do this thing because there's no other option. But especially in this book, that's just what it was like, well, if I don't do this, people that I care about are going to die, so I guess I'm just going to go do that now.
Exactly.
And it was just that, like, you just keep going. And now that it's over, it's like, wait, now I have time to actually think. Like, I'm really tired. He hasn't really slept in like 5 days at this point. And like, I don't have to figure out who to save next because no one's in mortal danger anymore. Now I have time to actually think about what I think about anything that I've actually been through.
Hmm.
And he can like look at Annabeth and realize like, oh, so it's not just like a delusion almost to imagine that we could be happy one day. because
Yeah.
there's so many things in their way. And now that Luke is gone, it's like, well, now we have a chance to actually be happy because he was the thing that was always messing everything up. And now he's gone. Annabeth realized that he sucks
Yep.
before he died, and so there's none of that like weirdness, going on or anything like that. And they can just be happy now. Thank
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. So, at this point, Percy touches Annabeth and she yelps, and he doesn't understand for a second until he realizes, oh, I touched her broken arm. And she literally passes out from pain. But this is where the gods finally start talking to them, and Apollo jumps in. He's like, wait a second, I got this. And he heals her, but she's still passed out. He's like, just give her a few minutes, she'll be good again. Um, and he starts talking about how he's going to come up with a good poem for this victory. um, Apollo's
Apollo.
so silly. Um, let's see. Some Cyclopes had saved Thalia from the fallen statue, so she comes limping in. The Stroll brothers also made it through with only minor injuries. They promised they hadn't even looted the city that much. Um, let's see. So the Stroll brothers are the ones who say that his parents are fine. Miss O'Leary found Chiron and brought him back to camp, but they seem kind of worried about it, even though he did get found. Katie Gardner reported that Rachel Elizabeth Dare ran out of the Empire State Building at the end of the battle. Rachel had looked unharmed, but nobody knew where she'd gone, which also troubled me. And so, yeah, that's when I looked up that part of the prophecy of like what the
Mm-hmm.
condition was. So this is when also, if May snaps out of it because the whole thing with the old oracle is done, then this would also be the moment where she could take in the oracle. And
Mm-hmm.
let's see. Nico also comes up to Olympus with his father right behind him, and they both come in stunned that they're getting like applause and acceptance right away.
Mm-hmm.
Clarice, Ares goes up to her and goes, "There's my girl," ruffles her hair, and she looks overwhelmed at first, but then she starts like smiling eventually.
Yeah,
Um,
I like the line he says where he's saying that it looked like she was worried that he was going to hit her and then
yes.
realized that he wasn't. And so then she's like trying to let herself relax. Like, I
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah, that's what that face looks like.
Yeah, Hera and Hephaestus barely pay any attention to Percy. Hera saying, "I suppose I won't destroy you and that little girl now." Um, let's see. Dionysus, his head still bandaged. Well, Percy Jackson, I see Pollux made it through, so I suppose you aren't completely inept. It's all thanks to my training, I suppose. Yes, sir. As a thanks for my bravery, Zeus has cut my probation in that miserable camp in half. Now I have only 50 years instead of 100. Um, don't get excited, Jackson. I still plan on making your life miserable. We also see Tyson. He goes from 30 feet back to normal size, and he runs into Percy. He's like thankful that he's normal size because he says his hug was like getting hit by a tractor, not the entire farm. Yeah. Uh, see, so he lets Tyson know, like, I saw you. You looked great out there. The other Cyclopes behind him are like, Tyson, let us. He's so brave, bravest of the Cyclopes. And Grover leads them on in a cheer, but then gets scared. Just like, please don't eat me, because they're like, roar. Um, Annabeth wakes up. Um, she asks Percy, "Did I miss much? Nobody's planning to kill us so far. First time today." Um, yeah, so Zeus, he begrudgingly thanks both of his brothers. He's like, um, thankful for the aid of Hades, and like Hades doesn't push him on that, but he's just like, yeah, and he pats Nico on the shoulder. He's happy about it. But Poseidon pushes his buttons a little bit because he's like, we must thank Poseidon. And Poseidon's like, I'm sorry, brother, what was that? We must thank Poseidon, without whom it would have been difficult. Difficult? Poseidon asked innocently. Impossible, Zeus said. Impossible to defeat Typhon. Um, yeah, so then Zeus is like, okay, now we can see to the demigods. So he calls Thalia up first, and he says, "You have made me proud, and all those hunters who perished in my service will never be forgotten. They will achieve Elysium, I'm sure." And he stares at Hades. Hades is like, probably. No, you could do better than that. And Hades is like, okay, yeah, yeah, I'll like, what does he say? I'll streamline their application process.
Mm-hmm.
And then he calls forward Tyson. Tyson, son of Poseidon, um, for your bravery in the war and for leading the Cyclopes, you are appointed general in the armies of Olympus. You shall henceforth lead your brethren into war whenever required by the gods, and you shall have a new. What kind of weapon would you like? A sword? An axe? Stick, Tyson said, showing his broken club. Very well, we will grant you a new stick, the best stick that may be found. Hooray! Tyson cried. Um, then he calls up Grover, or Dionysus calls up Grover. Um, he says, for your bravery and sacrifice, blah, blah, blah. And since we have an unfortunate vacancy, the gods have seen fit to name you a member of the Council of Cloven Elders. And he also says, because like Grover collapses on the spot. When he wakes up, someone tell him that he will no longer be an outcast, and that all the satyrs, naiads, and spirits of nature will henceforth treat him as Lord of the Wilds with all rights, privileges, and honors. And it's like, if that was in your power this whole time, bro,
It's Dionysus.
yeah.
But I also just really like that part because earlier on, he was like, so many people have died, so
Hmm.
many nature spirits are gone. They're never going to listen to me when everybody was just wiped out when I tried to get them to fight the first time to Percy. And he's like, I think it will be okay. And now we know for sure it will be. Um, that's just nice.
Yeah, I'm just a little annoyed that Dionysus had that power this entire
Of
time.
course he's Dionysus. He doesn't
Yeah,
actually care. He especially really doesn't care.
yeah. So, Athena's next, and she calls up Annabeth. Um, she starts talking about how Olympus is so damaged, but they don't want to just rebuild it how it was. Like, let's design something new.
Hmm.
And she says, "And you, my daughter, will design these improvements." And Annabeth is stunned, but Athena says, "You are an architect, are you not? You've studied the techniques of Daedalus himself. Who better to redesign Olympus and make it a monument that will last forever?" And all of the other gods start chiming in of like, "Well, you're gonna have statue to me. What about me?" And like, mine
Hmm.
has to look like this. Um, and Athena's like, "Okay, she gets it. Rise, my daughter, official architect of Olympus." Um, that's when Percy gets called forward, and um, he first bows to Zeus and then kneels at his father's feet. Um, a great hero must be rewarded. Is there anyone here who would deny that my son is deserving? And Zeus chimes in. He says, "The council agrees. Percy, you will have one gift from the gods." He starts like going on like what he assumes the gift to be. "I know what you will ask, the greatest gift of all. Yes, if you want it, it shall be yours. The gods have not bestowed this gift on a mortal hero in many centuries, but Perseus Jackson, if you wish it, you shall be made a god, immortal, undying. You shall serve as your father's lieutenant for all time." And he's like, "A god?" And Zeus says, "A dim-witted god, apparently." But like essentially, if everybody agrees, then yes. And Ares is even like, "I'd agree because that means I could smash him for all time, for
Hmm.
sure." Um, but when Percy looks at Annabeth, he sees she's gone completely pale. And he starts remembering that back in Titan's Curse, he was literally in the her position where she was considering joining the hunters, and
Hmm.
he was like, "Okay, but if she's immortal, like, can we even still be friends anymore? Will I ever see her again? Like, what's gonna happen?" And so he sees that exact same panic happening on her face, and he thinks about it and says no. um especially thinking back on all the other demigods. He wants to grow up. He wants to go back and see all of his friends that are still there.
Hmm.
Um, Zeus is almost offended at first with like him turning it
He's
down.
definitely
Like,
offended.
yeah. And so Percy's like, well, I'm honored and everything. Don't get me wrong. It's just I've got a lot of life left to live. I'd hate to peak in my sophomore year. And what's funny is considering how many of them like their eternal form is teenagers.
Yeah. And I
Yep.
will, a little, I guess, like, thing about the Heroes of Olympus books that we're going to read next.
Hmm.
There's definitely a cause and effect thing that's happening in those books where he does this, so they do that. For
Yeah.
people who've read those books already and know what I'm talking about. But one thing with this thing I just always have to point out is people talk about this moment as if he did it only for Annabeth, like, oh, he gave up immortality for her. She
Yeah.
is a part of it, but he, it's not like he was like ready and raring to be a god. And then he's like, oh, but I want to date Annabeth, so I'm just going to give all of that stuff up that I want. I don't think he
Hmm.
actually wanted to be a god.
No.
I don't think anything about him really would want to do that. Like, if
Yeah.
honestly, truly, it is a really great manipulation tactic to make somebody who just embarrassed you in front of everybody one of you. And so they can't do that to you anymore. Like, if you had somebody like Percy that is constantly pointing out all of your faults and he's wrong, he's absolutely right about every single one of them, and just proved how right he was about every single one of them very openly in front of everybody that you might care about. That's honestly a tactic that a lot of people do. Like, have you ever worked at a horrible job and you tell somebody how horrible your manager is, and so then they make you the manager?
Hmm.
They're trying to like stop a threat by making
Yeah.
you part of it, and so you're less likely to like turn them in or do something against you or whatever. There's so many stories about people doing things like that, somebody doing something corrupt, and so they just offer you something within them so that you'll stop trying to get them in trouble. That's what the gods are doing right now. And he's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be one of you, though. It is like a wild thing to be offered something like that. Like, when
Yes.
has anyone ever been offered something like that before? Or
Not
even
often.
thought that that
Yeah.
was even a possibility? So he thinks about it, but I always like the way that see him and Annabeth's relationship in these books is she's like the hope for the future.
Hmm.
And so when he looks at her, he just remembers, like, yeah, I want to have a chance to do that. Like, be in
Yeah.
a relationship with her, see my mom again, be like a normal person. Like, go to finish high school, go to college, get married, have kids, like, do all the things that I want to do. I don't want my life to just end right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. Like, he's not like Thalia, I guess, in that way. Like, he wants to do all those things and take risks and try to do things, and maybe it all will blow up in his face, but he wants to have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
It's not,
Um,
it's like she's a part of his life, but she's not his entire life, I
yeah.
guess, is the point I'm trying to make. Sometimes people over romanticize stuff like that, and it bothers me because of who I am as a person.
Yeah,
And so I
because
just have
he,
to point that out. Like, he loves Annabeth,
yeah.
but it's a part of his life. It's not his entire self, I guess.
Well, and he starts to remember. I have to point out, he says, I looked at Annabeth again. I thought about my friends from camp, Charles Beckendorf, Michael Yu, Selena Beauregard, and so many others who are now dead. I thought about
Hmm.
Ethan Nakamura and Luke. So like he's doing this, realizing all of these people just died too, and like I
Hmm.
wouldn't ever have to do that. But I do think there's part of him, he wants to go and see the rest of his friends again, not just
Hmm.
Annabeth. He wants to see through what the next part of it's going to be because all of those sacrifices can't be for nothing. Percy's not the kind of person who's okay with that.
No. He
Um,
wants to like he wants to continue fixing things, honestly. He
yeah,
wants to keep going and see what's going to happen now that they lived through this moment instead of it being the end of everything.
and unlike Harry Potter, he's not convinced, oh, I'm gonna go from the inside and change everything. That almost never works. You get the same
Never.
amount of power and you can be corrupted.
Yeah,
It's kind
and
of
that
like I was gonna say Ganondorf. Gandalf doesn't take the ring because he knows he can be taken over by it. And so at some point you have to realize I wouldn't be a good candidate for this thing.
Yeah. And even when you said ring, made me remember Lord of the Rings. That like Boromir is like, oh, if I just take the ring, it won't. I'll be able to handle it. There's so many people in that series that think that if
Mhm.
they take the ring, they'll be able to handle it, throw it over the edge, and handle it better than Frodo and Sam would. And every single one of them is wrong because you just like you can't do that. Like if to point out what I was saying before about how Percy and Luke are like opposites, that's like the thing that I think Luke tried to convince himself of to justify all the death and stuff that he was doing was he
Mhm.
was thinking like, oh, I can join the Titans and I can become like one of them, and then I can like manipulate Kronos to do the things that I want them to do and like what the demigods who agree with me want us to do. But of course that was never going to happen. Kronos was playing him the entire time, like completely to the point that he like gave up everything before he even realized what he was even doing. And so I think that was like Luke's thing of like, oh, if I can just be, that's like the thing that so many people, not even just in media, but in history, fall for the idea of like, oh, if I can just befriend a really powerful person, I can manipulate them into doing what I want them to do.
Mhm.
That never works. And so instead,
Yeah.
Percy's like, I don't want to do that, like, because that's not going to work. I just want to continue to do things my way because that's actually working.
Yeah.
Peace
So
out.
when he says this, Annabeth is shocked, but he says he sees like a sparkle in her eye.
Mm-hmm.
He does say, I do want a gift though. Do you promise to grant my wish? And Zeus says, if it is within our power. So he responds, it is, and it's not even difficult, but I need you to promise on the river Styx. And Zeus again is like, what the heck? Like, do you not trust me? And Percy's like, somebody
No?
told me to always get an oath. And so Hades is like, guilty. um, and so he says, in the name of the council, we swear by the river Styx to grant your reasonable request as long as it was within our power. So Percy goes on his ramble now. So from now on, I want you to properly recognize the children of the gods, all of the children of all the gods. The Olympian shifted uncomfortably. Percy, my father said, what exactly do you mean? Kronos couldn't have risen if it hadn't been for a lot of demigods who felt abandoned by their parents. They felt angry, resentful, and unloved, and they had a good reason. Zeus's royal nostrils flared. You dare accuse no
Yes.
more undetermined children, I said. I want you to promise to claim your children, all your demigod children, by the time they turn 13. They won't be left out in the world on their own at the mercy of monsters. I want them claimed and brought to camp so they can be trained right and survive. And Apollo's like, wait just a moment. Apollo is, he's always out there. He's one of the
Mm-hmm.
most dangerous ones when it comes to demigod children, I'm sure, besides Hermes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. And Percy says, um, and the minor gods Nemesis, Hecate, Morpheus, Janus, Hebe. They all deserve general amnesty and a place at Camp Half Blood. Their children shouldn't be ignored. Calypso and the other peaceful Titan kind should be pardoned too, and Hades. Are you calling me a minor god? Hades bellowed. No, my lord, but your children should not be left out. They should have a cabin at camp. Nico has proven that. No unclaimed demigods will be crammed into the Hermes cabin anymore, wondering who their parents are. They'll have their own cabins for all the gods, and no more pact of the big three. That didn't work anyway. You're going to stop trying to get rid of powerful demigods. We're going to train them up. We're going to train them and accept them instead. All children of the gods will be welcomed and treated with respect. That is my wish. Zeus says, is that all? Um, Poseidon tells him it's asking too much. And Percy's like, I hold you to your oath, all of you. And like looks around the room. Um, but strangely, his biggest advocate here becomes Athena, who's like, the boy is correct. We have been unwise to ignore our children. It proved a strategic weakness in this war. It almost caused our destruction. Percy Jackson, I have had my doubts about you, but perhaps I was mistaken. I move that we accept the boy's plan. And so they all agree to it, and that's kind of when party time happens.
Hmm. I think it's funny
So
that Athena says, like, oh, I thought that you were gonna, like, take everybody out, but I was wrong. And I was like, see,
yes.
everybody? So stop saying that's his fatal flaw.
Well, no, we gotta get there's another one coming up in the next chapter if you remember. So chapter 21, Blackjack gets kidnapped. Um, so he runs into Hermes first after
Hmm.
this whole thing happens, and I do think this conversation is interesting.
Oh, wait, before we go into this conversation, because this is a whole other thing,
Yeah,
I want to talk about this stuff that they were just talking about just
yeah.
then. One thing I forgot to say earlier was I laughed like out loud when I read the chapters last night, and
Hmm.
we and there was that whole part where Percy was like, "Oh, Annabeth was totally the person that Luke saw in the river because we said that," and I was like, "This is really weird. I don't remember this. I didn't
Yeah,
remember that this scene happened. I swear." I had no memory of it, but it was really, I was like, just like cackling, like literally like cackling in my apartment reading that, being like, that's really funny. It sounds like
yeah,
we remembered that scene and we're pretending like we didn't, but we really didn't.
yeah.
It's
No.
just, it's the only thing that makes sense. And Percy slash like Rick Riordan telling us that is correct. That's correct. But the
Hmm.
other thing from this end part that I just always think when he's talking about how like Hades coming back helped give them time when they really like they desperately needed it because Kronos was about to kill all of them in front of the Empire State Building,
Hmm.
and kind of like gave the kids that were still alive like some time to last long enough for them to
Hmm.
for Luke to die, and that being because of what like Nico said to him, and
Yes.
then also and the stuff that happened with like Thalia even, it just made me think like this happened because this is literally happening because of Percy.
Hmm.
And like Poseidon like saving everybody happened because of Percy.
Hmm.
That happened because of how he sees things. That's why
Yes.
those things happened. And they if he wasn't the way that he is, it just wouldn't happen the same way. Like he gave Nico a lot of patience and
Hmm.
empathy and support, even when he was screaming in his face that he hated him in
Yeah.
Bow the Labyrinth. Just like an FYI for people who deal with children, that's what you should do with them.
Hmm.
When you have like really traumatized children that distrust people because of everything that they just went through, that's how you should treat them. With
Yeah.
the way that Percy, another literal child, treated a child that is younger than him. You should be patient with them. You should be understanding. You should not take the things that they say to heart. You shouldn't say that they're trying to manipulate you because they're a child. I've heard
Hmm.
way too many adults say things like this online and otherwise that I just like have to make that point aggressively so because that is how you should treat anyone that is going through a super traumatic thing that you know is causing them to respond this way, but especially when they're a child and they're
Yeah.
younger than you, that is what you do. You give them the space and time to figure that out. You give them time to figure out how they feel so that they when they come back to you, they can.
Hmm.
You give them the space to do that. He like always made Nico know that he always has a place with him and the rest of them at camp. And that is why all this stuff happened. If he like I remember in Battle of the Labyrinth the other like even Annabeth was like, "Oh my god," like with Nico and was getting like frustrated with him, which I can understand why people would be, but this
Hmm.
is why that whole thing of giving people that are going through a hard time like patience usually always pays off in the end if you are actually trying to help them.
Yeah.
Even if it takes a while, it does. Um, and you know the whole thing with Poseidon, like Poseidon finally turned into his right form because he stopped trying to just like save his home and instead was like, my home doesn't matter if everyone I care about is dead.
Hmm.
And that's what made him finally go back to like the way he should be because that's what you should be doing. And
Yeah.
that's Percy's whole thing this whole time has been like, none of this matters if everyone I care about isn't around anymore. Like, I don't care if I'm the son of Poseidon. I don't care that I have a really nice cabin. I don't care that I have these really cool powers and cool things. What is the point of all of that if all my friends are dead?
Hmm.
There is no point to any of those nice things if I'm spending the rest of my life alone. He
Yeah.
doesn't that's like he understands that from the very start that the whole thing that makes all this stuff worth it is the people that he has to experience this with him.
Hmm.
That's the entire point. And that's why why they're even able to win and why they're even able to get to this point is because of the ways that he does this. Like, he doesn't manipulate anybody. He just tells people what he thinks is the right move, and they believe him because he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
But he lets people decide. Like, he didn't tell Poseidon, like, you have to do this or I'm never talking to you again. Or he didn't tell Nico, like, you have to go and help your dad because you betrayed me this way. Like, he told him, like, I want you to stay here and work on your dad because you're the only one who could. He could have guilt tripped the shit out of that child, just like he guilt tripped him in the first place to get him down there in the first place.
Yep.
But he didn't do that because it works much better if you don't and you leave people the option to figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
granted, that means that you don't control them, but that's kind of the whole point. Is you have to let go of control and let people figure things out on their own. And
Yeah.
they'll usually get to that point better that way if you're not trying to control the outcome so much.
Yeah.
Like, that's overall like the big point of this book series really. Is like, if you just stop trying to control people, they'll probably do the right thing if you actually have a relationship built on anything that actually matters.
Yeah. Um, let's see. So, I do think like, hold on. I had a thought and then I lost it.
Well, I guess the thing I
Yeah.
was going to say too is just um it just makes me really happy always to like read this scene or like think about it
Hmm.
because this is honestly exactly what like abuse survivors would do if we had power.
Yes.
Um, Most of the time we don't, but if we did, like, I have like a list in my head that I could easily list off. Like, if some person who has some sort of power with how like, abuse is taught or how kids who go through it are treated or whatever, I would tell them a bunch of stuff. And, like, it wouldn't even be hard to think of it. I would just start telling them things of like, you should do this instead of this, and I would just go along with it. If I knew that they would listen and they had to, and
Hmm.
they had to do what I would say, I would do that kind of thing the exact way that he does it here. Because it's like, yeah, we know exactly what we need, and honestly, out of everybody that in society, children are abused the most.
Hmm.
Children are the most marginalized class of people. They don't have any rights for themselves. They depend completely on adults. They don't have any way to get help. They have to there are all these things working against you to be believed when you are a child in a way that doesn't happen as aggressively when you are an adult. Like,
Hmm.
when you're an adult and you come forward and say like, this person raped me, there are things that happen like that. There are people who try to like make you responsible for part of it so it's not completely the other person's fault. They maybe try to like find holes in your story to make it not be true because they don't want to believe it, that kind of stuff. But like, no one is coming up to you and saying that you literally made that up and implanted memories in your head. Like, people
Yeah.
do that with children. There's this idea that children make up abuse stories, that we make up that we were abused by somebody because we had a dream about it, because we saw a therapist and they put that idea in our head, because we are fantasizing and we want attention.
Ugh.
Like, people literally say that about children. People say that kind of stuff to me, which is why I didn't say that stuff, like anything really that was going on, to other people. Like, because people thought that I was just doing this stuff to get attention. And it, like, honestly, ironically, when it was happening with me, the times when I could have told people, it was kind of like the worst situation where all the stereotypes were there. My
Hmm.
parents were getting divorced, and it would be very easy for somebody to think that I just was saying that to get back at my dad because my parents were getting divorced and I was mad about that. That is honestly a thing that people think about children, that
Oh
their
gosh.
parents will be getting divorced and they'll be mad at the other parent, so they'll make up an abuse story to get back at them. That is deranged. It is legitimately like deranged thinking that people believe that, but they still do. Like,
Yeah.
to this day, they still do. I see videos of people saying that kind of stuff every day on TikTok. They still believe that. You would never say that about an adult. You would never say that about an adult. You would say other things, but you would never say it like that.
Yeah.
You would never say that. And so it's just wild that that's such a problem. And so in this series, to have him be able to say that, and to tell people exactly like what he's been wanting, this is like the overall argument I make a lot with people who try to defend Luke and say like, oh, Luke tried to do what he needed to get done. Percy would have been Luke if like Sally died or whatever,
Yeah.
or like Percy never would have done the things that he was going to do if Luke, you know, wasn't there or like showed him the truth or whatever that like weird evangelism that people do for Luke happened. This list just off the top of his head shows that he has known this for years.
Hmm.
Like Percy has probably had this in his head since he was 12 years old and he showed up at camp and realized that he has a cabin by himself and all these kids are shoved into the Hermes cabin, don't have anywhere to stay. He has
Yeah.
known this entire time. If Luke wasn't trying to kill everybody and bringing down the foundations of their civilization, they could have been talking about this entire time. Instead of it being something that took until this moment, it wouldn't have taken 5 years for
Yeah.
him to have these talks. And yeah, it would have happened differently. It would have been like a slower thing to get them to agree to all these things, but he could have very easily gotten everybody on his side and they would have been able to do a lot more like strategic things with the gods because they all would have been alive and they all would have been on the same team. It would have been so much easier to do it that way.
Yeah.
Just because the violent way is the way that it happened doesn't mean that's actually the way it's supposed to happen. Um, but either way, it's just this is honestly the kind of stuff that happens when people that have gone through real suffering get like a little bit of power. That's the way to know that we do,
Hmm.
is because this is the kind of stuff we want to do. We don't want power for ourselves. We want everybody to have some.
Yeah.
Because
You
it's like,
like,
what's the point of me having all of it? Ew.
yeah. You
What am
use
I
your
going to do?
power to give other people more agency and more
Mm-hmm.
voice. Yeah. Which, yeah, that's the Percy we know and love. It really would make sense for him to have chosen anything else in this moment, really.
No. It just shows how well of a character he is written,
Hmm.
that him saying all this is the least surprising thing ever.
Yeah.
Percy, as a 12-year-old, would have said this, much less a 16-year-old. Um,
Yeah.
he's just so consistent that you know what the kind of things he's going to say before he ever even says them.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, that is what should happen. He should not have been running around being killed when he was 12 years old. Now they can't even go on a quest until they're 13. Now they have to be claimed. And they
Yeah.
are claimed, like, immediately. Like, one of the first scenes in The Lost Hero is when kids show up at camp and they literally, like, walk into the borders and are just, like, literally immediately claimed. Like,
Hmm.
immediately.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even know, like, where they are completely yet. And it's just like, BAM! You're an Hephaestus child. It like happens very very quickly. They are following his rules,
Yeah.
because you know they don't want all of their children to gang up against them one day.
Yeah.
But it's
And
just
they swore
so,
an oath for good measure.
yeah, and it's just, this is why I think that the Harry Potter series is really pathetic.
Yes.
There's a lot of reasons why it is, but this is like a good example of why it is, because these sort of
Yeah, why
things
it falls
didn't.
apart at the ending.
Yeah, and like, and he didn't. This kind of thing didn't even occur to her.
Yep.
Like Harry becomes a cop. Like that would be the like the idea of that in this world would be if Percy actually did become a god,
Yeah.
because that's basically what Harry ends up doing, is joining the people like the government that tried to destroy his life from the time that he was a child. Um, and he
Pretty
just like
much.
joined them afterwards.
Like they
And
gaslit him for a whole year, and he's like, "Oh, those are the people I want to be a part of."
yeah, I definitely trust those people at 100%. And it's just that I don't think that J.K. Rowling is not smart enough. She's not a good
No.
enough writer, and she hasn't actually struggled in her life to actually know what
Yeah.
like marginalized people would think. And that's like one of those things of like you can't hide that lack of perspective,
Hmm.
that like Rick and Becky are people that have actually struggled. And so they know, if I could magically like snap my fingers, these are the things that I would change for kids that are being abused.
Yeah.
And so
I
they
mean,
made his character be able to do that. Like other series that are written by privileged white people don't even know how to construct that story because they don't know what they're talking about.
Hmm.
Like, genuinely, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, you
And
don't
that's why I
really.
love this one because they actually do know. And it's just one of those things that you can't fake it. You just
Yeah,
can't fake that.
you don't become a teacher if you don't have a little bit of that in you, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
that's where it comes from. We just have a little bit more to get through. Um, so chapter 21 is Blackjack Gets Jacked. Um, let's see. So they run into Hermes at this point, and Percy has a little side conversation with him, basically like, I'm sorry for calling you a bad dad. I kind of get your side now. I get that you knew fully what was going to happen, including that he was going to make the right choice in the end, and there was no way you could tell him. And like he essentially is like, yeah, that's it. I couldn't tell him I wasn't allowed to. Um, let's see. Um, he also says he held back and he stayed like his distance because he was trying to minimize the damage that was happening. Which, that choice is probably a little bit less justifiable in this case, but
Yeah.
um, yeah. The other thing too, this actually happened earlier. I said this in the wrong order, but he's marveling, like flipping through TV channels, marveling that the Mist is already doing his job with the mortals.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that he says here, kind of, I thought was an interesting take from Rick. Um, he basically is like, it's my job to monitor what the mortals are saying, and if necessary, help them make sense of what's happened. I'll reassure them. Trust me, they'll put this down to a freak earthquake or solar flare, anything but the truth. Like him knowing, oh, I can. The way he says it is so benevolent, but it doesn't feel benevolent at the same time, of like, I'm going to steer their little mortal minds into whatever comforts them enough that they move on to the next thing. Um, it's just weird. Yeah. I mean, we've seen huge disasters in history. I brought up one with Shannon earlier because I'm like, I wonder if there's a Riordan reason why this happened in the Percy Jackson universe. The '89 Loma Prieta earthquake in the Bay
Mm-hmm.
Area, which, like, if you're somebody from California, everybody has a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like a lot of people remember that one. Katrina happened during our lifetime. We had the Maui fires. So these kind of disasters, like, yes, they get talked about less and less frequently over time, but I don't necessarily think people forget them.
Mm-mm. No,
Yeah.
and that just felt like a god. Like,
Yes.
the gods would think that, oh, you're just so, like, simple minded, you believe whatever we tell you to, and you just move on as if nothing ever happened. That's
Hmm.
definitely not true.
No,
And people
it's
are
yeah.
affected by it, but it's also like you have to, like, believe something that makes you not feel like your fabric of your reality is, like, collapsing around you.
Well, yeah, and this is the immortality versus, like mortality kind of conundrum, is
Mm-hmm.
because humans' time is limited. So if we spent all of our time like, oh my gosh, that 3 days in Manhattan where I don't remember what happened and then all of a sudden everything was crumbling, oh my gosh, like if we spent the rest of our lives thinking about that, like that would be really a sad existence. I don't know.
Yeah. I will say this part, I thought the way that Hermes is saying, like, oh, I know I stayed away and
Yeah.
when because I couldn't tell him that he was going to make the right decision. I still don't think that was the right thing. I
Yeah.
think I still think that even if you know that he's going to make the right, you knowing that he was going to make the right decision should have meant that you knew that you should stay around more to, like, make it easier for him to make the right decision instead of all the death and destruction that came first. If
Yes.
you know that somebody has the capability of doing that, then wouldn't you want to be around them even more than normal so that they fall on that side instead of the death and destruction side?
Yeah.
That always to me just sounds like him giving way too many outs for himself. I understand why this scene was written this way in, like, a Rick Riordan way. Like, he's mentioned before that the god that he identifies with most is Hermes, which actually makes sense because
Mhm.
Hermes is always doing a million different things. And that's
Yeah.
definitely Rick. And we know from this story that, that this is a whole thing for his son. And so
Yeah.
I'm sure that there was a lot of times when his son, who inspired this whole story, that had ADHD and dyslexia and was struggling a lot with school, I'm sure there was a lot of times when his son would cry and like beg him to not have to go to school the next day. And him and Becky had to explain why he had to go anyway, even if he didn't understand why,
Yeah.
and things like that. I think that's the root of where this scene came from. And I can understand that, having like a niece and just knowing children, that yeah, sometimes they do have to do things that they don't want to do. And I do remember, like, granted, my version's always horrible, but still, I remember when I was like in middle school calling my mom every day crying, like asking her to like call me out of school because I didn't want to go that badly. And some of the time she did, because everything was so horrible then that she just wanted to do something that made me happy. Um,
Yeah.
but but still, it's just that general idea of like sometimes you have to have your kids doing things that they don't understand, and like later on they will. It's just, I understand why he put this scene in like this. This entire thing is something that he wrote for the love of his children and wanting them to feel like they had a place that they would be accepted when they didn't feel accepted by the rest of society. And so I understand why this is written this way. It's just within the context of the story, I don't like it. I understand
Yeah.
why Rick wrote it this way for his children, and that's why I'm okay with the scene being this way. But for the actual character of Hermes, I don't think it actually makes sense if I pretend like I don't know that this is Rick Riordan doing this as like a love scene to his children.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to Hermes, it doesn't really make sense for the decisions that he let happen. Because you're not helpless to have let your son get that out of control when he hurt everyone else worse than you. Especially him saying, like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. You didn't have to do it. Like, I always go back to this because of me being around my own niece. Like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to, like, be stoic and stay away from a child. Be around them, even if it
Yeah.
seems like it's hard sometimes. Like, I watch my niece be sad sometimes and respond to things in certain ways or whatever. I literally gave her a pep talk yesterday. That was so cute.
Hmm.
Like, when we were driving home, she's like, "You're going to go home soon." And literally, like, made that face like she was mad. And I was sitting there being like, "You're going to see grandma tomorrow, like on Tuesday, and you're going to see me again this weekend. It's going to be okay." And all that kind of stuff. And she was like, "Okay." But I just had to sit there and like give her a pep talk about that kind of thing. Um, it's just, yeah, like, yeah, hard stuff is going to come up with her. She's
Hmm.
going to struggle in life. She's probably not going to be neurodivergent because literally nobody that she knows is. None of us are. Absolutely
You're
none of us
neurotypical.
are. Yeah, are neurotypical. We're all neurodivergent in some way. She's gonna have like some struggles with that. She might have problems with kids at school, like everybody does, and it's gonna be hard to watch her going through that. But I'm not just gonna disappear from her life because it's hard to watch her being like have a hard time with kids at school. The similar to how I did. I'm
Yeah.
gonna try to help her through it instead of just being like, anyway, bye. I'll be back in 20 years when you're over this. I'm sure she really would appreciate that.
Yeah. So Percy, or what was it? Hermes also says like I shouldn't have ever said it was Annabeth's fault or anything because I knew better. I knew better. I was just mad. Which like okay, thank you for taking accountability, sir. Least you could do, I
God.
guess. Yeah, that was what was like. I don't know. So much about that conversation is like this is
The
weird.
the best part of this whole entire scene that makes it all worth it for me is when Hermes is saying like, "Do you really think that we have the capability of changing? We've been this way for thousands of years. Do you really think we can change?" And Percy's like, "Yep,
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, I do. That's all he says. And Hermes is like,
yep."
okay, well, I got the son in Wisconsin, and then I got two daughters in Los Angeles.
And he's like,
Yeah, so it's like he says, I'll give you a list, and can you get all my kids to camp? And Percy says, I promise, and I won't forget.
"No,"
Um,
and he won't.
and Hermes, before he leaves him, says, Percy Jackson, you might just teach us a thing or two. Then Percy runs into Athena. And there's one part that I really want to focus on here, which, okay, here's what she says to Percy. Um, I once warned you, Percy Jackson, that to save a friend you would destroy the world. Perhaps I was mistaken. We've said this before. He doesn't let his missions of saving whoever he's saving, whether it be Grover Sea and Monsters, Annabeth in Titan's Curse, or like going through the labyrinth. He doesn't let whatever the actual mission is actually stop him from achieving what he needs to.
Mm-mm.
He never has, never will. He like willfully leaves his mom in the underworld at one
Mm-hmm.
point. Even though
He
that was the whole
takes
reason. Yeah.
he takes really big risks. Like he thinks his mom might not come back or that they might not let her come back.
Yeah.
He has to think that Tyson is blown up and dead for a while because he didn't stop him from helping. He
Yes.
doesn't know if Annabeth is gonna survive when she's trapped with Luke, and all the stuff that happens with Zoe. Like he doesn't know if camp is gonna be saved or if everyone is gonna be wiped out at the end of Battle of the Labyrinth. All these things happen, and he could like try to take control, but he doesn't,
Yeah.
because that's just not him. It's just not him, and that's the way that this stuff should go. But still, that's that's it's never been him. That's why it's so weird that people just believe her, especially when this scene is literally written into the story to say that she was wrong the entire time. When I read this scene, I was like, "Are you kidding?"
Yeah.
Like all this time, people argue with me about this more than most things because they're just so stuck in like the way of thinking that like
Yeah.
I
And
still live in fear every day because I told the Seaweed Brain podcast that
yeah.
that's not what his thing is, and I'm like living in fear every day that they're gonna make an episode and call me stupid because
Right?
I'm like most people are just so sure that that is what his fatal flaw is, that it's like it's wild to me that there's a scene in the book where Athena literally says, "No, that's not your fatal flaw."
Well, and I will say, perhaps I was mistaken. Maybe people are taking that for softened language. That is a know-it-alls. I'm admitting I was wrong. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not even gonna say it soft.
that's as
Yeah.
close as Athena's ever going to get to admitting that she was wrong about something.
Exactly. So basically, she kind of gives him a don't mess this up, kid. Like, you better think very carefully about what you're gonna do next. And that's the end of her thing. But I just wanted to point out, she literally says, perhaps I was mistaken. That loyalty is not his flaw. So yeah, he meets up with Annabeth and um, oh, wait. Sorry. Before Athena goes away, she erupts into a column of smoke, like just to be threatening and like slightly singes him. So when he meets back up with Annabeth, she's like, "Why do you smell like smoke?" And he's
He's
like,
like,
long story."
whatever.
Yeah. And then they get to the lobby, and Sally is yelling at the guard. Oh, wait, I forgot to say this. When they were in the throne room, Percy had Zeus change the Empire State Building blue like he was supposed
Hmm.
to. So that
Hmm.
was his signal to his mom. Zeus didn't ask about it or didn't fight it or anything. It just happened. Um, and so his mom tells him that she was freaking out because she's like, "We saw it lit up blue, but that was hours ago. Like, where have you been this entire time?" Um, and Annabeth praises Paul's sword work, and he's like, I mean, like, it's what I know. And then he also asked Percy, I mean, is it real? Like, the 600 floor, is it real? And Percy's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I'd love to see it someday.
the
Just like excited.
Also the Empire State Building TikTok account like yesterday posted a video being like, "Who's the person that keeps stealing all the lightning bolts from the 600th floor?"
Oh my gosh, I love it. Um, Paul is not for mortals, my own chided. Anyway, the important thing is we're safe, all of us. And that's when Nico comes in and he tells him about Rachel. He's like, by the way, Rachel took blackjack and said she was going to camp.
A place
And
she's not supposed to get in.
yeah, yeah, it's hold on. I told her she would die if she tried, but she insisted, is what Nico says. I was like, I know someone said she would die. Um, so yeah, she just takes blackjack and runs off. And so that's going to be the next part is like, what did Rachel go to do? I mean, we've already kind of hinted at what it's going to be, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it
Um,
still happens.
so yeah, we have one more episode of The Last Olympian. It's going to be relatively short in like the amount we're covering, just because the chapters are very short. We got what's happening with Rachel. I assume we're getting the whole Paul and Sally ending coming up too, because we haven't read that yet, and the Annabeth and Percy part of the ending. So
Mm-hmm.
all of those storylines are going to get tied into neat little bows in the next few chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll probably have more show news because they're filming in public. People know where they're going to be filming in public, and so people are kind of watching out for it. Um, but yeah, we have another topic potentially we were talking about today, but we're doing more digging into that one.
Yeah, I have to. No, that's a whole thing I have to do to myself. The next couple days, but I did want to say like next time I do want to talk about why we don't want to show things from them showing scenes like the spoilery things. Not just because they're spoilers. We'll talk about the things that are in it. I just don't want to show them, and I want to explain why. Just because we showed that stuff for the second season, but some of the stuff Becky said when the leak stuff happened just made me see those things very differently because I didn't realize how like invasive people were when they film in person.
Yes.
The other thing I thought we could talk about, if there isn't a bunch of stuff that comes out like that, is the whole dark Percy thing. Since we
Yes.
talked about Clarice being more like that, but not Percy at all, and it's just especially when we get to like the end, it's the polar opposite of how he acts. Like if he was like Dark Percy, he would have stabbed Luke and everyone would have died. But he's not
Yeah.
like that, and I just want us to talk about what how that just feels like toxic masculinity
Yeah.
to
We could
me.
talk.
Like
There's a whole
when that popped in
toxic.
my head, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what that is. That's why people are like that.
There's a whole toxic versus positive masculinity thing going on here. I mean, I've probably talked about this video before, but a channel that I like, Cinema Therapy, has a toxic masculinity video. It was one of their very first ones that they did, and they basically used Aragorn from Lord of the Rings as
Hmm.
like positive masculinity. And I think that that is a great watch if you want to know the difference, like really quickly. But we'll go into it with Percy in particular, in light of how people like to attribute some of his "don't touch her" lines in this book that we've gone over.
Hmm.
Because he said it to Kronos at one point during the battles in these chapters we just read too.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird how people do that, especially because the
Oh
scenes that
my gosh,
happen in
I'm just laughing at like Mason's like, "Don't touch her."
yeah, it's not all like that.
Yeah.
It's confusing to me because the people who say that stuff have read the Heroes of Olympus books before, and so they know that there is a part when he goes farther than he usually does. And the reason why that scene is scary is because he doesn't do that stuff. That's him acting out of character because he's losing his mind a little bit out of all of the traumatic things that have been happening to them in the course of that book. And
Yeah.
he wants to die, literally die for the next book and a half after he does that for 5 seconds because of him being so hard on himself. And so it's like it's that is like the one scene where he does that, but it's so out of character for him that Annabeth gets scared because he's never like that. And so
Yeah.
it's always kind of fascinating to me to see when people try to like make characters do something that they want them to do because they're just so used to characters in that hero role acting a certain way that
Yeah.
they like don't know what to do when that character isn't acting that way or they don't even notice it and instead just like talk about them as if they are that way. But like Percy isn't that way. That's the whole crux of his story. He's gave his weapon away to somebody else who was trying to kill him the whole time because he trusted that they would do the right thing. Like
Yeah.
he's not somebody that is angry even. Like the times when he is angry, he has a justifiable reason to be. He's not like over the top angry at people where he's like losing control. The times
Yeah,
when he gets mad, he should be mad because he has a
exactly.
people are doing horrible things to him. He should be mad, but it's not to a point where he's like losing it or going over the line or anything. He still is being himself. He
Hmm.
still is like, even though he's mad at somebody, he's not like losing it in the way that people imagine him to be. And it's just very interesting
Yeah,
to see that happen when that's like the opposite of this story for this character. Um,
yeah.
it's interesting how people like see that and like want him to be like more toxic, I guess.
No, no, he's
I don't know.
perfect. Yeah.
But yeah, you are right that Lord of the Rings is always the example I give people for like how masculinity can be beautiful.
Yes.
And that is like and this honestly this series is another good example too with Percy, but that is a really good one because every single movie of Lord of the Rings they're crying. All of them are crying. All of them are crying on scene in every single movie. Every
Yeah.
single movie they have a time where they all start crying. Every
Yeah.
single time where you're
They
crying
sing,
like
they kiss each other.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the last scene you see in the entire movie in the entire trilogy is Frodo kissing Sam on the head and while Sam is like sobbing about having to say goodbye to him. Like that is like beautiful that they love each other that much. Or like Aragorn is like this hardened, you know, fighter or whatever, but in the last movie he's fighting and he doesn't even know if Frodo is still alive. He's just fighting on the basis that he might be alive.
Hmm.
And or like the whole you bow to no one scene
Yeah.
that they all bow down for the hobbits who they think is like less than, or you
Yeah.
would think that they are less than if they're not these like powerful fighters, but they're the ones that made all these good things happen. That is also masculinity. This is why like spirituality people don't know what they're talking about when they talk about
No.
masculinity and femininity. I'm like, what does that even mean? I honestly don't even know what Aphrodite means. Like, I
Yeah.
have a crisis inside my mind whenever I try to figure out what she could represent. Like, good
Yeah.
luck, TV show, figuring that out because I can't.
We could get into some of that stuff next time. But yeah, those are some of the topics we're bouncing around for next time. And we're gonna talk Cold Springs eventually too, which is Rick
Hmm.
Riordan's first book that we're reading in the background. Shannon more so than me. I'm a little bit behind, but yeah, we have that planned out as kind of like our interim episode. And by then there will probably be a lot more promo for season two. So that's like kind of where we're at content wise. But if you guys have any ideas, if you have any short stories that happen between here and Heroes of Olympus, even that you want us to read, that would probably be a good time to drop them.
Hmm. And there are
Yep.
some.
Yeah. Yeah. We would even take fan fiction suggestions.
Oh, I have fan fiction.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. I
Yeah.
have a
So we
couple
could
of.
probably do like a couple episodes of an interim just to like give ourselves a break from reading for a bit. Okay. We will get in that next week. I got to get William to bed. So
Yep.
we will talk to you guys next Monday.
Bye.
Bye.